We've got a news series over on our second channel. In this video, we're going to try that format and look at the events in the Western world that have reached Russians. Protests against racism. What is happening, how it looks from the Russian point of view, and what to make of it. In 2020, it feels like you've gotten into a university where they tell you to forget everything that you've been taught before. Now we are going to tell you about things that we haven't fully figured out ourselves yet. So, by saying these things out loud, we are trying to make sense of them. It's like a therapy session. We have to understand how to live when shops are being destroyed for one's profit, but at the same time, looting is not a criminal activity but a fight for justice. So, let's start our session, shall we? Everyone with an internet connection is aware of the events of the last 3 weeks. We're not going to go into detail of each of those, but we will outline the big picture. On May the 25th, an African American named George Floyd died in Minneapolis during a brutal arrest. Cops were fired and the main culprit in Floyd's death was arrested on murder charges. This sparked peaceful protests, but then the cauldron had reached its boiling point.
I would describe the atmosphere.
Toxic. It could have been my son.
Yeah.
It could have been it could have been me, it could have been my family, it could have been...
Public tension rose and true social chaos began. The cauldron boiled so much that Trump decided to stay out of harm's way in his bunker when riots broke out near the White House and called the National Guard in the city. Looters showed up on the streets who used an excuse of fighting police abuse to rob shops. Here you can see the looting of a jewelry store in Los Angeles. Here's a pet store. And here the marauders wanted to prey on some Louis Vuitton clothes. A little later they hit an Apple store. By the way, there are not just looters, but also reckless thugs who, in the name of justice, will destroy stores and beat the owners, and they don't care who is inside, a granny or someone else. Let's call them looters and scumbags. So, in Russia, propagandists mainly talk about them, replacing the blueprint of "do you want it to be like in Ukraine" with "do you want it to be like in America?" Like, you see to what the lack of spirituality and same-sex marriages lead to, and this is because they did not vote for the amendments to the Constitution. And America is a police state. And they will show you the videos of the police running over rioters with cars, with horses, and pushing them very aggressively.
Goodbye, America.
But none of the propagandists will show truly peaceful protesters who are not willing to turn to violence, carnage, and theft. Those people will, on the contrary, shout, "Stop looting."
Do not loot!
Propagandists will not tell you about any of this, nor about the fact that the police can voice their support for protesters. Here, a Los Angeles police chief comes up to the crowd and says that the cops hear them. And look how this guy's face changes from this to this. A Michigan sheriff came forward in the same vein. "We are here to protect your right to voice an opinion." And even more so, Russian propaganda will never tell you about the cases when police officers knelt in support. So you know that these events are covered in a lot of controversial topics where everyone will pay focus on what suits them best, or what is more beneficial. For example, corporations that did not step aside supported the Feast of Hypocrisy. They posted black squares with white text on their social media. Amazon says the inequitable and brutal treatment of black people in our country must stop. We stand in solidarity, equality, etc. The same Amazon fires a black worker who organized a protest to get social benefits during a pandemic. Google says, "We also stand in support of racial equality in honor of George Floyd and others." Also Google, "We will not allow to monetize the images of the public demonstrations or police brutality." or they can always block you for showing sensitive content. Disney says, "We stand against racism, we support the black community," and so on. The same Disney makes the black actor smaller on the posters of Star Wars in China and believes that the Black Panther should keep the mask on. But that's not all. Let's get back to Russia. Do you know who demanded that the United Nations punish the US authorities for violating human rights? The main human rights activist in Russia, Ramzan Kadyrov, the head of the Chechen Republic, the one who said that if you insult someone on the internet, you must be either killed, put away, or intimidated. And this is far from the only example.
У нас таких людей нету. Нету у нас геев. Если есть, заберите в Канаду. Хвала Аллаху, подальше от нас.
Regular citizens of Russia who live across the ocean from America join the carnival of madness. They are so worried about police lawlessness in the USA that they don't notice the same mess at home. If you are so worried about representatives of the black race in the United States, then do not avert your gaze from your own backyard. The Russian libertarian Ivan Shinarov posted an excellent and at the same time mind-boggling roundup of cases on his Twitter demonstrating abuse, violence, and torture by Russian police. He came up with 49 cases, and this was only his collection. So it turns out that this situation illustrates all the madness of the modern world. Marauders who rob and beat people in the name of justice. Police officers who become reckless in the name of security. Weird acts of white people kneeling and asking for forgiveness of black people for the years of slavery, or even making a random person kneel. In this chaos, the main thing to remember is that different people take part in this. There are real peaceful protesters and truly understanding and non-abusive cops. It's just that it's hard to figure things out in this cauldron. And you will be surprised, but there are things in which Russia is very similar to the United States. In the USA, 10% of people own 71% of the country's wealth. The same ratio applies to Russia. And at the same time, half of the population splits the leftovers among themselves. The situation is so surreal not only in the USA. Russia has its share too. There are people offended by police lawlessness in America, but they forget how Russian citizens were detained at peaceful rallies or tortured in police stations. Every year, the police want more power, but when there is a person who defends the labor rights of ordinary policemen, these same police officers take them into custody. Everyone is guaranteed freedom of thought and speech by law, but they can be arrested for reading these lines. If you move away from the topic of police lawlessness, it won't make things easier to understand. We are going to see the main communist in the country who is not against mentioning God in the Constitution. We will see when the person who states this
Коронавирус, он не очень контагиозный, то есть не очень заразный. У него не очень высокая смертность. У вас есть своя жизнь, и она прописана Господом Богом. И умрете вы тогда, когда написано в вашей книге судеб. Вы не можете ни раньше это сделать, ни позже. Там написано. Вы не дергайте, все равно будет так.
Is appointed the head of the Center for Coronavirus Control. We will see an alcoholic blogger who becomes a deputy's assistant.
Человека моего характера, моего склада ума, дорога была только одна, в ЛДПР.
Today's idols are those who glorify irresponsibility and degradation, feed the audience with betting scams, and the audience is only happy to eat it up and cherish the dream of the same success, because the more primitive and simpler, the better. That's why people come up with challenges like lick the toilet rim and piss your pants, and we consume it and top it up with our likes. If you still do not understand what kind of madhouse we live in, ask yourself a question. How would you react if 10 years ago you were told that you would be listening to the cartoon Blue Head discussing social inequality in the world? The session is over.